Welcome, everyone, to a new and wonderful collaborative cast. I'm really honored today to be sitting with Allison Tabano. Allison Tabano. I've never said it out loud. How weird is that? And Michael Eck and Philip Morris. And these three share a very special secret. Now we're doing What's My Line? Oh my God. I didn't know I'd end up there. Allison is a voter for, let me make sure I get the credit right, for the Screen Actors Guild. Michael Eck votes for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Philip Morris is a Tony Award voter. So we're really, that's pretty amazing for one small marketing department. And so let's go. How long have you been voters, all of you? Who wins the race here?
Well, what is the SAG voting? I actually don't know.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. So, Screen Actors Guild, so it's basically everyone who's a member of SAG-AFTRA gets screeners in the mail right after they do the SAG nominations. And
Screeners of what?
Films. So it's just film.
Do you get the
TV
segments
now.
or the entire film?
Entire film.
Okay.
And then for the TV that gets nominated, we get the DVDs of those. Sometimes you either get the DVDs or you get screening pass codes.
Right.
You can get tickets. Like if I was living in Los Angeles or New York City, I would be able to go to actual movie theaters to see it. But being up here, obviously, I can't make some of the in-theater screenings.
Right.
Also, a lot of studios have their own digital streaming service now, specifically for the award. So they're password protected. I get a PIN code, and yeah, so I get to watch the movies and the TV, which a lot of the TV that gets nominated, I'm typically watching anyways throughout the season, so I don't normally have to catch up on those, especially with Netflix. A lot of Netflix shows get nominated now. So
How reasonable is it? Do you get them in a big pile, or are they spread out
come
nicely?
one by one, but typically it is all kind of sort of at once. Like there's like a 2-week span. Typically the nominations are announced, I want to say like the beginning of December, and then or around December, and then it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to actually start getting the screeners, and then you have about a 3 to 4 week window for voting, and then the voting ends. I want to say it's like 2 days before the actual show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right up to the line.
Yeah.
So you only screen those that are nominated?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah.
You don't have to watch
I had a
everything.
friend once who was chosen to be one of the
Nominators.
Yes. And I mean, they gave her it was like a binder of every single
Wow.
movie, of everything. It was unbelievable. And I just remember we were like, oh, okay, movie nights.
About how many do you do?
It depends on what I get and what I have time to watch. Typically, I always try to watch the ones that are the ones that are in the press.
Of course.
So typically, of screeners, I'll probably get DVD screeners. I'll probably get about 10 to 12, and then some of those will also be available digitally. Other movies will only A Star Is Born was only available through a streaming service, so I didn't get a DVD of that. So I was able to watch that online. So I typically get about, I would say 20 films and TV shows to look at. I mean, with the SAG Awards, it's not like you're voting for Best Picture or Best Sound Design. You're literally just voting for the acting categories.
Gotcha.
So there's not as many categories that you're voting for, but yeah.
Within that, are there the traditional categories? Best actor, best actress?
Yep.
Or? Okay.
Yep, Best Actor. So their version of a Best Picture is Best Ensemble in a cast.
see.
So
I see.
that's the kind of as a whole.
Have those been announced yet for this year?
Yeah. Yep.
So who was
back
the
in
best
January.
ensemble?
Oh gosh, actually, I didn't get to watch the show. Edit that out. I want to say actually Black Panther won. So the
Right.
thing that I like about the SAG Awards is because it's actors voting for actors, the winners. I always find that when the Golden Globes come out, because the Golden Globes are usually the first award show
Right.
that goes out. That usually forecasts for being what is going to be the winners in the Oscars and whatnot.
Right.
But the SAG Awards are different because it's actors voting for actors. It's different because it's just people voting for their fellow actors, fellow man. So it is. I mean, you do tend to see different winners for Best Actor and Best Actress that you won't see in the Oscars because I'm sure there's some politics there as well. But yeah, so I always like that. But I'm pretty sure Black Panther won for Best Ensemble.
He gets to pin us to the wall like a bug because his ceremony hasn't happened yet.
Oh.
Before we move on to Philip, what qualities do you think that you look for, perhaps, that the Globes and the Oscars miss or don't?
That's a great question. I don't. Typically, it's kind of in line with what I see at the Oscars, like Rami Malek. I can't remember his name. He was in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
I chose him. It was just
Right.
far and above. I was like, yes, I emotionally connected to his performance. I just kind of want to be moved, and I also kind of do factor in like. So for me as an actor, I know who I am as Alison Tabano, and I know how I can change for a role. So I do also factor in the fact that, like, you know, sometimes with Emma Stone, you can tell that she's this goofy, you know, kind of funny person in real life, or at least that's how she is in doing press. But when I find her doing a role that is just so the antithesis of that, I'm
see.
always like, oh, like I get, like
That's
I know
a
how
plus.
hard that is. Yeah,
That's cool.
So I do factor that in, like just roles that if I was in that role, this is how it would make me feel, and if they evoke that feeling out of me while watching,
Right.
I tend to lean
If they
towards
can,
those
if they can get
roles.
you.
Yeah.
Right. You're
'Cause
jaded.
it's an actor
Sure.
voting for an actor. So
How wonderful. Now we're going to get to Michael in a second. Philip, I know that your process is maybe the most, most pernicious year over year.
Interesting that you used a P word, pernicious, because I was going to say there are 3 P's in my mind when I think about my role as a Tony voter. Clearly, it's a privilege,
Yeah.
and clearly, it's a pleasure. Less clearly, it's a pain in the arse.
Right.
It's a lot of travel because you can't see it on DVD.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's so different than
a lot of
Well, let's
travel.
can't see what. Get to what do you have to see to qualify?
Well, to qualify, I qualify only in my role as
Right.
director of Proctors.
Right.
So Proctors is a member of the Broadway League, and its CEO gets to be a Tony voter. So upstate New York,
very
what we
interesting.
think of as upstate New York,
Right.
there are, I believe, are only 3
I see.
of us. The CEO of Shays in Buffalo,
Right. Buffalo.
the man who presents in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, Alan Lecholino, and me. So you have to see, everything that's nominated, right? That's the rule. If you didn't see everything nominated, you can't vote. But you don't know what's nominated until May.
Right.
And many things open and close normally, not just open and close because they're not doing well, but they were meant for a short run, or they're the Manhattan Theater Club, which is like Cap Rep, it's a LORT, and it's doing 6 shows a year, and
Right.
they run 6 weeks each. And so you end up with a lot of judgment calls like, that one's not doing terribly well. I better go before it closes.
Right.
Or else, if it's nominated, I won't be able to vote, right? So it's pernicious is a perfect word, and part of the pain in the ass part, or
Yeah.
arse part of it.
And Michael, yours is a little closer to Allison's probably, but it banks on what?
Mine's actually sort of quite different than either Allison's or Philip's situation. Allison is voting on these films that came out within this certain time period, this year. Philip's voting on shows that were in this Tony season. The way the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame works, to be nominated, you have to have a body of work that's 25 years old. You can't be nominated until 25 years after your first commercial release. So what I'm voting on is not Rami Malek's performance in Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm not voting on Sam Mendes' direction of The Ferryman. I'm voting on the entire body of work of these individual artists. So it's a little bit of a different process. The nominees are announced in the fall. They're inducted in the spring. We're given probably a fairly similar window to what Allison has, a couple weeks after the nominees are announced. I find out about them the same way everybody does. I hear about it in the news first, and then we receive a packet that has a voting book. In the voting book, there's a well-crafted essays that give you some research to start with on each artist. And one of the things that I'm able to do, because I don't have to go to New York, et cetera, is I make up playlists of the artists. I do a lot of reading of the artists. One of the reasons I'm a voter is because I have a fairly I'll say expansive knowledge of the form from many,
Right.
many years of writing about it for a variety of different outlets. And so what I do is I take a deep dive into the nominees. Some of them I instantly know. I've been trying to get the MC5 in for years, but my vote hasn't worked yet. I didn't have to do a lot of research on that because I'm so familiar with their work. It was really exciting this year, for example, to take that deep dive into Janet Jackson's music, which I'd certainly been familiar with because
Right.
it's so ubiquitous. But to really look at what she's done and how she changed aspects of the music industry was an exciting thing to do. So it's a little bit different because it's the whole body of work, not an individual work.
Do you end up with one vote?
I have, the way it works is there's usually about 15 nominees. I vote for 5. So you click 5 things on the box. You're told if you check 6, your vote doesn't count. There's a little over 1,000 voters total for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm not on the nominating committee. That's a mystery to me, like it
Right.
is to you. You know, we don't know who does the nominations. And then what they do is they have a public vote that runs for a couple months. And that entire public vote, you know, they tabulate out, and that receives the weight of a single voter. So
Interesting. How many SAG voters are there?
I actually don't know how many total people in SAG-AFTRA.
Oh,
Or how many
everybody
vote.
in.
Yeah, anyone who's in SAG-AFTRA
Oh,
is eligible to
interesting.
vote for the SAG
Oh,
Awards.
I
Yeah.
didn't.
That's
get
kind of
that.
And
wonderful,
that's
isn't it?
really because of the
Yeah.
merger that happened.
Yep.
And it almost doubled, and that's why now the awards also are for TV.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
There are some 700 Tony voters. I'm just guessing, but I don't believe they all participate fully. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
Because many of them are not Metro New York, and so to do what I do and live in L.A., it's
Yeah.
got to be brutal.
Yeah.
I know. How
So-
do they do that? How would they do that? Fly out?
My
for
guess
it?
is they're category specific, and they just abandoned some categories, and or I do know this for a fact, and some friends they wait till the nominations and abandon the categories where they might have missed,
okay.
and come for 2 weeks. And,
Yep. And
Right,
just
and
see
just-
them all.
See it all.
Do it.
And do I
Being-
assume you'll take like occasional weekends where you'll go down and catch multiple shows in one shot, or?
Oh yeah, I mean at this point I have a wide variety of tricks. I'll go down. I will drive on a Wednesday in order to see a Wednesday evening and drive home. Now that means getting home at 1:00, but
Right.
sometimes that's the only way to pull it
Yeah.
off. I can't lose 2 days of work.
Yeah.
And then I found myself annoyed being in New York. I mean, I think I'm a Tony voter for, this is my 10th year, 9th or 10th year. And I found myself annoyed because music is my passion. I love the theater, but music is my passion. And I would spend all these days in New York and never hear music. So 3 years ago, I decided to become a subscriber of the New York Phil. And I purposely picked Thursdays, because I could go Thursday and then spend Friday, Saturday, or I could go Wednesday
Right,
and
and catch
overnight and
Thursday.
stay for Thursday and drive home Thursday. So I now, have 6 New York Philharmonic concerts that I am delighted to be at in addition, and I package around that. It's interesting though. It's just really interesting because sometimes you just don't know. King Kong. Who knows? It's not selling particularly well.
Right.
It was
Fascinated by it,
lambasted.
though.
Yeah.
It was terrific.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
my.
Shockingly terrific. But they don't sell it as a Cirque show, which in fact
Right.
is what it is.
Interesting.
Right.
In fact, to that end, the arms move because a man or a woman is jumping from 25 feet high in the set with a rope, and is the counterweight for the arm going
How
up. It's
fabulous.
it's
Wow, that is
awesome to
fascinating.
watch.
Yeah, so like you say, it seems like it's probably a shoe-in for some technical awards,
Yes.
but maybe
Right.
not on the other side.
Yeah, well, and then when you watch and see the sales aren't there, you go, can it make it to
Yeah.
the Tonys? And so you got to get there for those.
So people
To
are
the
just writing
point-
it off as Spider-Man, right?
Yeah, right. Some,
Yeah.
certainly the press has, the critical press has.
To the point that you were saying you have to see the nominees. let's say you've seen all the shows that Best Actor's been nominated for a musical, Best Director, but you haven't seen some of the technical categories. Does that mean you can't vote in the Tonys or just not in that category?
In the category.
In the category.
In the category.
Great.
So if you've seen, right, which is
Yeah.
how I think the
Yes.
other people from the country pull it
Sure.
off. They have
Gotcha.
10 categories they want to vote in.
Yeah.
They make sure they're there for those.
Gotcha.
I'm going to throw you into a different comfort zone here, uncomfort zone for a minute. What makes you a great voter?
Oh, I don't know if I'm
Start
a
with
great voter myself. I don't know if I'm a great voter. I say to everybody, I feel obligated to see absolutely everything because there cannot be that many people outside of the boroughs
Right.
that can do it. And that we're close enough that I can do it. So I would put, not that that's good enough to call a great voter, I would put that as one of the pieces of
Attributes.
being a great voter for me, is that I'm not in the city,
Yeah.
but I see everything.
Well, before we jump on, the fact that you do all this must be very powerful, very awesome for you as a programmer here as well, no?
Oh yeah, it's really helpful to see the stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of the pleasure part of it. It is great to see all the stuff.
I mean, it's even stuff that's not working, right? It's just,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and with our relationship with Capital Rep, sometimes I drag Maggie with me on something she wants to see,
Right.
or sometimes I see something and I'm texting her instantly. Maggie, this is something. Lobby Hero. When I saw Lobby
Right.
Hero, which was my first time, even though it was a redo, I said, Maggie, this is for us, and she saw it, she's read it, she knew it, and in fact, this year, she's doing it. So it does have interesting interaction.
I've been lucky to speak with Philip about books over the years. We
Yeah.
talk a lot about books. We've talked about music. I think one of the things that makes Philip a great voter is he's a consumer of culture who looks at everything he consumes. So we've talked about very highbrow books, yet he just praised King Kong. He can enjoy both ends of the spectrum, and he can look at all of it critically. And I think that's probably something the three of us share, is the ability to do that.
yeah,
Well, certainly with film and music, you have to see all of it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
sure. Allison, you agree? And
Yeah, oh no, 100%. And I think for me, and it's this truth, I'm sure for both of you, I know what moves me. And when I'm watching a film, I know what it gets my heart beating and what gets me connecting to something. And it could be the most oddball movie, but I can appreciate, the cinematography for what it is. Or,
right.
like... Birdman with Michael Keaton,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So I can
Yeah.
appreciate not only the acting in that, but I can appreciate how that was shot and how how that
Right.
whole thing. And so while someone might look at that and say, "Yeah, it was good," but I can at least focus it or hone in on the actors, even though I could appreciate the whole thing about it. But I'm able to just connect with the performances. I don't know if that makes me a good voter, but I know what
Right.
moves me. And I think at the end of the day, when you are voting for something, it's something that moves you. I mean, and I think that's like that with anything, politics or anything you're voting on. It's something that you connect with and that moves you emotionally. So
I've had fun in the oddball categories. Since I'm committed to seeing everything, I can vote for sound and lights and costumes isn't an oddball category, but the ones that don't get shown on TV.
yeah, the technical production, right?
They pop up. Oh, by the way,
They're
while
the
you weren't
commercial ones,
working.
yeah.
And it's been interesting because it's forced me to think about that in a way that I hadn't exactly before, even though I've done this for 45 years. I haven't critically thought about lighting, but now I do.
Yeah.
And it changes the way I sit in the seat, and it's kind of interesting because I'll look at Ferryman and say, great example, oh my God, this is incredible how this is lit and how this lighting has impacted my perception and my absorption of the story, which is what good anything is in the theater, right? Is the story enhanced or is it hurt by this decision? And it's been very, very, very interesting to feel like I'm getting better at that.
Yeah.
The stuff under the stairs.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The set design,
Yeah.
this lived-in house. I think one of the things that, and I think a lot of people do this, I don't think this makes you a voter, but I think a quality that voters do share is that ability to see the various parts as they're happening. Birdman, if you take Brian Blade's score away from Birdman, you've got an entirely different experience. It's almost all improvised drumming.
Right.
It's incredible. Phantom Thread, if you take that score away.
So true.
I interviewed our own Michael Gatzendorfer the other day from the Proctors Collaborative Education Department, and he's done so much work in theater, and he said that he's come to the decision that lighting is everything. And when you talk to a costume designer, you realize that costume is part of telling the story that took you to where they needed to take you. And if something was different there, it may still be effective, but it's going to be a different story. And I think we're looking at all those elements.
Is my question to Maggie when she asked me to interpret like a script into a television spot. I say, "Tell me, is this being directed by gerbils? Are they wearing scuba suits? Because I gotta know. It's very true."
And again, in my case, because I'm not looking at a single piece
Yeah.
of work, I'm looking at the body of work. I hope that one of the things that makes me a good voter is I yell when I talk about music. I get so jacked up when I talk about music. And so for me, looking at these individual artists' craft work was up this year. And to think about the fact that we don't have disco
Right.
without craft work. Now, some rock and rollers would go, oh, well, then it's their fault. But think about that whole concept. We don't have disco without craft work, without the mechanic beat that was developed in Cologne, Germany. We don't have that. We don't have...
We lose the
ED
80s, the entire
Yeah.
decade.
We do. But bigger than
what
that,
I wear.
Philip, we lose this decade because we don't have EDM without Kraftwerk.
Right.
You're a big fan of Brian Eno. Eno was already working on some of that stuff at the same time as they do, but we don't have that whole ambient world without Kraftwerk. And so to look at how, one of the things that's suggested in the voting regulations is you look at the depth of their career. You look at their influence, and naturally, as somebody who's written about music for my whole life, a lot of that just comes to mind instantly when I think about these groups. And then when I do that deep dive, I see even more of it. But it's really thrilling, especially if there's an artist up that you're interested in. Roxy Music was up this year. To think about the same thing, the changes they made. I just mentioned Brian Eno. Eno's,
Right.
See, I'm starting to yell. Sorry. Eno was part of that whole situation. And to just look at where the fingers went and what we would and wouldn't have and how that would be different without these artists, to me, is a very exciting part of looking at that as a voter.
So, how about if each of you share a revelation, something, someone's influence that you hadn't found at all before you started your research, or an actor you had kind of written off but they blew your mind? Or a show that you fully expected to hate? I know that happens to you quite often, so.
Well, that was certainly my experience with King Kong.
Yeah.
But actually, my honest revelation was as we created the High School Musical Theater Awards,
Right.
and now we were inviting people, 35, 40 people, to observe high school shows against, and unlike the Tonys where you can't ask those people to look at all of them. So now you have to have an apples and orange comparison. Two people see the same show, but those two people need to talk about the show in this universe versus the show in Albany or Glens Falls or whatever, and then somehow compare them and looking and watching at how we accommodated and needed to accommodate the complexity of looking at 40 shows in an environment where you can't ask the people to do what I do.
Right.
And so that was really a revelation to get how hard that was and how hard it would be, as it will be for the Eddies.
Yeah, the intricacy of putting this first Thomas Edison Capital Region Music Awards is very similar.
Very
It's a
similar.
learning process. And it's not only a learning process, it's just a thrilling process because it makes you think about the local artists in ways you hadn't before.
Right.
Right, and again, they have to do apples and orange comparisons because
Sure.
no eye is seeing everything,
Right.
hearing everything.
Yeah.
Right. Allison?
I don't know if I've had a revelation, but one performance that I know I saw and it still sits with me, and I just remember being like, oh man, this, I was so disappointed that it didn't win all of the awards, was Tom Hanks and Captain Phillips. And
Oh, wow.
there's a scene, I don't know if you guys have seen it.
No.
But it's about the true story about the captain of a big shipping like a
Container ship, right.
container ship, yeah. And it gets hijacked by pirates, and it was a true story. It was covered on the news. But so, anyways, he plays Captain Phillips, and so basically, what happens in the story is that the pirates end up bringing him onto one of the lifeboats, and so they've got the SEAL team trying to get him out, and it is high pressure, and it's just him, and he's their lone.
No basketball.
Yeah, no, he's the lone captive. But anyways, at the very end of the movie. And I didn't know, or actually I did know this fact before I watched the movie. The very end of the movie, he's saved, spoiler alert, and he gets brought back on like a naval ship, and there's a medical person there waiting for him, and they do a check.
Right.
Well, the fun fact about that, I guess fun, is they didn't use an actor for the naval officer who was the medical person to doing this PTSD check, basically. She was actually, that is literally her job. And they basically just said to her, what you're going to do is you're going to just treat him like a regular person going through this. So what you witnessed was this very real and raw performance by Tom Hanks, because it's what it is he's saved. And then he's dealing with this, what did I just experience? What did I just go through? And these emotions, and watching this woman just deal with him being like, you're okay. That it was unbelievable. I actually have goosebumps talking about it. And I mean, my fiance and I were on the couch watching it together, and after tears in our eyes, and that's how the movie ends. And him and I just both were like, give him all the awards, all of the awards. The last 5 minutes of that movie, I was like, everything. It was just one of the most honest pieces. I don't even think as an actor I could do what he did, or at least as an actor, you strive to do that. Oh my gosh!
I want to see it
now.
It's
such an amazing movie, and I'm telling
You're
you,
selling it.
going into the movie knowing that last little, it's not even 5 minutes of the movie, but the very end of the movie, knowing that it's Tom Hanks and it's this woman who is a real life naval officer doing her job, and watching him. Watch it.
I know this isn't the Captain Phillips show, but I know they source their pirates actually from, again,
Somalia.
Just regular folks in Somalia.
Yeah, and in
us.
fact, the guy, I don't know his name, but the one Somali pirate, he was nominated for an Oscar.
Amazing.
And he was just like a cab driver.
The Roma story, right?
Yeah.
That was that year's Roma, in that regard.
It's really a great movie. I highly recommend.
Stevie Nicks.
Yeah.
That was the
Oh, yeah?
revelation. Yeah. I'm not going to vote for Stevie Nicks, and I didn't vote for Stevie Nicks, but I did the work. And it reminded me that as a youth, oh my God, she was my heartthrob when I was 16. It also reminded me what brilliant, brilliant work Fleetwood Mac has done through the years. So it was fun to revisit that. But the part that was the revelation was to realize that as a solo artist, we have this image of the gossamer, sort of witchy woman and everything, but she has done so much to further the cause of women in rock music, and has been such a mentor and such a nurturer to young artists. And I wasn't aware of that role that she played. She's one of the very few people who's been inducted in a band and as a solo artist, and she's the first woman to happen with that. And in the interviews that followed after she was not, after she was she hasn't been inducted yet because that's coming up. But after it was announced that she was one of the winners, she really used that as a platform to talk about the fact that I hope that my role as the first woman inducted in this fashion can be a guidepost for other artists coming up. And to see I knew about the influence Fleetwood Mac had, but to see that sort of behind-the-scenes influence that she had made me feel very good about the work that she does.
This is the, do we like awards? How do we just feel about awards, period? Award shows and awards. Do they have any value?
I have been conflicted about every award thing I ever participated in.
Amen.
Every high school award program that was forced down my throat at times as an arts administrator. Donors who only want to give to a competitive environment and a winner takes all kind of process. And I accept it at what I'm doing as a Tony voter because they're pros, and if they lose, they go home and they get to do it again. and again, and you know, you feel badly for somebody who might be screwed by the process at the end.
Yeah.
You know, but even then, there's usually a lifelong, an award for lifelong accomplishment, even if they didn't win any single
You mean the
thing.
Glenn Close
Academy
Award?
Award. You know,
Glenn
right, but
Close
something
Award,
happened,
yes.
right. But at the other level, at high school and other stuff, it's just terrible.
Right.
And I know we participate in it a little bit, but I think we try very hard to avoid the winner-take-all mentality, at least. It's many winners. And that seems only right. You know, it just seems only right. So I accept it for what I do, but I don't really like it as a methodology for what we do.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I kind of take it for what it is. It kind of just is what it is. It's not going anywhere, at least for the SAG Awards and stuff like that. I think, and you can tell when people win one of the SAG Awards, they go up there and they always say, this is my favorite one, just because it's actors for actors. Like, it's like peer to peer. I don't necessarily think, at least the ones I'm voting on, I don't think it really hurts anyone's career. And does it affect their career in a positive way? Sure, of course.
Right.
But I just kind of take it for what it is.
But even positively, right? It's not number one. It's always like number three.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're
I get
not
it.
conflicted, you shouldn't be a voter.
Right.
Right.
That seems sort of a bottom line thing to me. I don't like competition. That's why I didn't get into sports. I got into the arts. And at baseline, all of these, the Tonys, the SAGs, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they're all marketing tools for those respective industries. So there's a lot of things we can point to and go, these aren't necessarily positives. But the thing that sort of helps me sleep at night is I find when each round of these awards comes around, it gets people talking. It gets people engaging in these individual arts. They want to see the movie that got nominated.
Yeah.
They want to see Bohemian Rhapsody. They want to see some show that wins the best musical. You know, the band's Visit, which is a magnificent show.
Or even
and
the
now-
debate about Green Book. I mean,
Yeah.
that
It gets people talking.
That
Yeah.
was really
It was a good
wonderful.
one.
You know,
Right.
Klansman was spectacular. Probably should have won, but the conversation about it
Yeah.
Yeah.
needed to happen.
Definitely.
Too.
Exactly. You know, and in my world, the online, you know, now in the world of social media, the crazy invective that comes back and forth about who's up for the
course.
Rock and Roll Hall of
Right.
Fame, but it means people are listening. It means people are talking, and I think at the end of the day that's the value we can all get from the award shows.
I'm not on this national level, but I've voted for, I've been in the Olympics for the visual arts locally
Yes.
for a long time, on most years, when I'm not crazy engaged in something else. And I feel the same way, except I always get to the point where, who cares what I think? Who cares if I don't think it's a great idea for these kids to be competing? To see, it's the fact that it's just happening. It's not even about the winners. All the kids in that room feel like, my art is important. It's so important all these grown-ups got together and all the TV stations are here. And it's not a football game, right? And we don't even want that much attention, probably. We don't want to be on every Saturday on Channel 9, but they're here today for my art. And so it really, I take myself out of the equation and I just look because it's not about me.
And in the non-professional situations like OVA,
Yeah.
one of the great things about OVA, I did it for some years, and you can have a part there where you can write notes to the
Yes.
teachers and to
Yes.
the children. I believe we do that with High School Musical
Yes.
Awards, where you can talk with them about, even if their show didn't win, you can talk about what the great parts of it were, how they can improve, and that's kind of
So
a
true.
unique thing there. That doesn't happen in the professional awards, you know, but...
How about, have you ever made a vote that you regretted after you made it? When you saw the awards, or maybe even just after you cast the vote and you thought, maybe not?
I don't think from me. No. I usually, like I said, I vote very emotionally. So if I'm emotionally connected, then I'm like,
Right.
normally, if anything, I'll become disappointed if like they don't then go on to win, or they don't then
Sure.
go on to win even a bigger award at, you know, at the Oscars or something like that. But I mean, usually the people that do win are just as good. It just means
Right.
I was more emotionally connected to another performance. So I don't think I've ever regretted anything. No.
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 Yeah. Yeah, it's done. It's done.
Right.
Though I do wish, in some ways, that I had kept a running score of how my voting matched, because I'm not going to say winning and losing, how my voting matched to what the larger group voted. Just a running score, I would guess I'm about 50%.
You're a lot higher than me. I'm pretty contrarian, and I'm going to vote for the underdog punk rock group that set everything on fire rather than the act that sold a lot of hits. I'll do the research.
So the box office is less important.
The box
right?
office is less important to me. Yeah.
Well, I think if I were to characterize the single trait that I find most attractive in people, it's that they appreciate things. And you three are my friends already, and I appreciate you even more after this interview. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you.
Thanks.